Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to be doing a welcome webinar all around first year student class registration and academic advising. I know this one is always a very exciting subject for a lot of people, so we're excited to kind of give you all the nitty-gritty and kind of dig into it. Real quick, my name is DePaul Straub. I am the Assistant Director here for New Student and Transition Services and have the pleasure of overseeing the Welcome Webinar series this summer. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. A recording of this webinar will be available starting tomorrow on our Welcome Webinars website. So if there's anything that you miss, you can always refer back to that recording as well. We also will be taking questions throughout the session. So you can use that Q&A feature on Zoom, and you should be able to submit questions. Please know that once you submit your question, we are able to see that. Some of the questions, we have a couple people from CASA and the Registrar, as well as our office, kind of in the back end that will help answer some of those in the chat. But others we will save and dismiss for later in our session when we kind of do an open facilitated Q&A. So please know if you do submit that question, we are seeing it. We just might be holding it for later on in the webinar. So we will definitely try to get to as many of your questions as possible in the time that we have. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Ariel to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. We're so excited to have you here at Minds. So, my name is Ariel Rainey, and I'm from the Registrar's Office. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some of the functions our office handles to start off. So, one of the main things we do is oversee student records. So, we will be the office that you reach out to update things with FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. That'll basically allow you to designate who is allowed to know your information regarding your Minds record. The next thing we handle is registration. So you'll get very familiar with some of our systems when you have access to your schedules in August. We also send out communication with registration information to prepare you for registering for the following semester. And we will be the office that you reach out to for help troubleshooting some of the technical things that come about with these registration systems, like Smart Plan and self-service. I'll pick up here. I covered student records, registration, so student information systems. Um, so the different registration sites, Smart Plan, Self-Service, and Banner, those are available through Trailhead. But we also have other softwares that you'll use during your time at Minds available at my.minds.edu. One of those sites is Canvas, and that's what you'll use to access your courses. So my.minds.edu is a good one-stop shop for all sites related to Minds. Another function of our office, we publish grades. Those are available the Tuesday following the last day of finals, and you'll find those in self-service in Trailhead. So if you order transcripts or request an enrollment verification for any reason, you can find the links for the third parties that offer that service to us through our website. National Student Clearinghouse does enrollment verifications, and Parchment does official transcripts. You can also get unofficial transcripts as long as you're an active student at Minds through Trailhead. Lastly, our office does degree auditing for the purpose of graduation, and you can track your graduation progress in DegreeWorks, which you can access through my.minds.edu or Trailhead. Once you complete 90 credits, you'll get an email from our office with information about how to apply to graduate. So we can move to the next slide there.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jenny Gambach, and I am an assistant director in CASA. And like Ariel, super excited to have you here today. As mentioned, CASA is the Center for Academic Services and Advising here at Minds, and we are staffed by really amazing group of professional academic advising coordinators who are experienced in working with undergraduate students with a range of backgrounds and interests and academic goals. So as Ariel mentioned, the registrar is really there to manage records, a lot of our systems, the technical aspects. Advisors are there to help guide students in navigating their educational journeys. So that can look a little bit different from student to student, but it would be things like maybe understanding your degree requirements and academic policies, making and adjusting your semester by semester plan, customizing your degree with a lot of those really amazing opportunities that you know are at Minds, and sometimes strategizing with students on how to overcome academic challenges, and just really getting students connected to resources that are here to help them. You are not required to meet with an advisor in your first semester at Minds. In future semesters, whether or not you'll be required to meet with staff or faculty advisors will depend on different factors like GPA or major. You will always be emailed in advance of the registration period if you require an advising meeting. So this is really my first opportunity to remind you to be reading your Minds email regularly. This is our best way to convey important information to you. You'll hear things from the registrar, your faculty, academic departments. Lots of cool opportunities are going to come your way via email, as well as other information you're just required to know. So please, please do skim your email daily and make sure to click in to it and really read anything that seems like it could be important. Other thing we just wanted to mention, we know a lot of you are probably really eager to connect with an advisor to discuss your plans, and we really do appreciate your patience and waiting until August when the schedules are ready to do so. So we're going to be talking about how schedules are built a little bit later on, so I'm not going to go into detail about that now, but advisors want to know about the credit you're coming in with and what that first year schedule looks like to really best assist you. So that takes some time to process and prepare. But we will have a lot of opportunities during that hell of a welcome week for you to connect with us. Group advising, drop-ins, all sorts of opportunities for you to get those quick time-sensitive questions that you might have addressed. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So one of the things we like to talk to incoming students about is how college level advising may be a bit different than high school academic counseling that you might have received. So I know that, of course, varies a lot from high school to high school, but in some schools you might have experienced things like counselors coming to you or requiring meeting for all students. At Minds, we really want to encourage you to be proactive and take ownership. So we're here to provide guidance, but ultimately it will be up to you to reach out and connect and to make any final decisions and to really try to plan ahead to connect with advisement, but also to take notes so you can remember what you've talked to your advisor about. So we know sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So we never want a student to feel embarrassed about asking any questions at all. Please come to us and ask. At the same time, you can really make the most of your advising appointments by coming in, being prepared. And the more you look at things ahead of time and come in with those specific questions, the more that we can be of use to you. And we'll talk about some of those tools to learn more later on. CASA advisors are always willing to refer students to the right direction, not necessarily one-stop shop, just too much specialized knowledge that goes into things like financial aid and career advising and mental health counseling and so on. So we really want to encourage you to get to know all those different resources at Minds, and your CSM 101 Intro to College Success class is really going to help you out with that. One thing we also like to touch on in this presentation, because we know I have a lot of wonderful family members here, because of federal regulations around college records, we generally cannot communicate with anyone but you, the college student, about your student records, but we do really encourage you to keep your support network in the loop about how things are going with your academics. And to that end, we just encourage you to really be honest with your advisor as well. Almost every advising meeting, that advisor is going to ask, hey, how are things going with the classes? Or how are you liking your classes? Or are you understanding what I'm telling you about this rule or that requirement? So the more honest you can be with us, the more we'll be able to assist you and get you connected to the right resources. So I'm going to turn it back to Ariel now to talk a little bit about registration basics.
Okay, awesome. So first year schedules are built based on your admission surveys that hopefully you've all filled out and completed, AP and IB credit, which should have been received by July 1st from us. So if you don't see credit for an AP or IB test, make sure to get that to us as soon as possible for the purpose of building your schedules. It's also based on transfer credit from any other institutions, extracurricular groups you might be a part of, athletes or students in honors. You may see your registration with specific classes on there. So we will enroll all students in at least 12 credits to be full-time, with most schedules being 12 to 15 credits. Final schedules will not be available until mid-August or early August. So please avoid reaching out about schedules until then, as the information is likely not finalized yet, even if you do see a full-time schedule now. I won't go over registration overrides too much now since you don't have access to make schedule changes, but these may be applicable to you when you have the ability to change your schedule. And more details about those and the process we use to resolve registration errors will be available when we email you in early August about registration. So you can move to the next slide and I'll go over the overview of the timeline you can expect for this summer. So again, if you still have AP or IB scores or transfer credit you're expecting and you don't see reflected in DegreeWorks, make sure that gets us as soon as possible, since we're actively building schedules now and we want to make sure we have the most accurate picture of what your progress looks like. In early August, you'll receive an email letting you know your registration information is finalized and that you'll be able to make changes to your schedules on your own. So any additional classes you'd like to add, you're free to do at that time, and you'll have access to make those schedule changes up until the ag drop deadline of September 2nd. So we can move to the next slide, and I will turn it back to Jenny.
All right, so this slide goes into a little bit of detail on how advising interacts with that timeline. So as Ariel mentioned, your schedule will be built for you by the registrar's office, and then eventually it will be released to you. And then at that point, you own it and you are able to make changes. So I alluded to some of this on the first slide, but starting in early to mid-August, so no later than the week of the 10th, we are going to invite students to our advising Canvas site. So Canvas is Mine's learning management system, so something you're going to be very familiar with all your classes, but you'll get a bit of a sneak peek with us if you haven't used it before. In the Canvas site, we're going to have step-by-step instructions for how to really get to know your degree requirements, the curriculum, and how to review the schedule that you've received. And if it turns out you do need to make some schedule adjustments, there's also resources in there and how to do that. So we have some quick 2-minute tutorials on how to add a class, drop a class, withdraw, waitlist, and so forth. And we have answers to many questions that students have when they are starting out at Mines also posted in there. So things on how to learn more about minors or the combined graduate program. So lots of great information to get you started in that site. And we're really going to expect students to log in and engage with that content when they receive it, because it will really, I think, help provide a good foundation going into your first week of classes. So we're going to send you information for accessing that to your Minds email. So again, I will reiterate, please be checking in with your Minds email, especially as we get further along into August. Then during Hell of a Welcome Week before classes start, we're going to have some great opportunities to connect live with advising. So we're going to be presenting during your mandatory orientation session. So all students are going to get really that same overview on how to review their schedule and consider if changes are needed. And then to complement that, we'll also have some drop-in advising sessions. So those are really quick question sessions for you to come and connect with someone in a small group or potentially one-on-one, depending on what you need. But either way, those are going to be opportunities to address any individual time-sensitive fall scheduling concerns if you have them. And those drop-in sessions will continue throughout that first week of class. So a lot of great ways to connect. Again, those sessions really focused for fall schedule courses. And questions that you might have. But after the first week of class, you'll also continue to have really great opportunities in that CSM 101 Intro to College Success class and beyond to learn about longer term planning and to answer other questions you might have about all of the good opportunities to customize your degree. So you'll start to hear from CASA about some of those opportunities as we get past that add drop deadline. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, so the moment some of you have probably been waiting for. What classes will you be taking this fall? So here is a list of common classes that you could see in your fall schedule. So important to point out, you are not going to see all of these classes. So just a selection that gets you to that 12 to 16 or 17 or so credit range that Ariel mentioned. So everyone, for the most part, is going to see that CSM 101, 1 credit freshman success seminar, and likely good chance you're going to see a math class, depending on the credit you're entering with. There's also a good chance you might see one of our core culture and society classes, or maybe CSM CSCI 128, Intro to Computer Science, or EDNS 151, which is an interdisciplinary design course, really introducing you to engineering design while you will develop some technical problem-solving skills, tackling a challenging real-world problem. So some really cool course options. You might see physics, depending on where you're coming in, or chemistry. So most of these classes that you're seeing on this slide are part of the core curriculum at Mines. Those are classes that students will take regardless of their major. So some of you I know are probably eager to get into some more major specific coursework, but the good thing about your first semester being mostly or potentially even all core curriculum classes is that there's so many really interesting majors at Mines that you might not know about yet. And we really want you to have the opportunity to explore, to have classes count, even if you decide to change directions. But if there are courses that are very pertinent to your intended major, those are going to be prioritized. So for example, if you indicated on the registration survey that you're planning to be a chemical engineering major and you don't yet have chemistry 1, CHGN 121 Principles of Chemistry credit, you are going to end up seeing that on your schedule. One thing I should mention also here, if you applied and were accepted to a first year's honor program, so that would be the Thorson or Grandy programs, you will see the first course in that sequence also appear on your schedule. And the 2-course honor sequence will end up replacing that Haas 100 and EDNS 151 courses that you see listed here. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, so this slide represents a sample schedule. So as mentioned, you might not have this exact set of courses, but the important thing we want to point out here is that it would not be uncommon for students to have an 8 a.m. class or even a 7:30 a.m. class. And it's also common for students to have classes that go into the late afternoon or even evening. So you are going to potentially have some gaps in your schedule, and that's usually a really good thing. So we will talk about that in the next slide. Okay, so one thing we want to get students used to is the idea is that you need to start thinking about booking in study time for yourself. So good rule of thumb for science and engineering classes is that you should plan on at least a couple hours of study time per credit hour that you are enrolled in. So not class, but credit hour. So that would be like if you were enrolled in 15 credit hours of coursework, you might need an additional 30 hours outside of class or even potentially a little more to devote to homework, projects, and studying. So I know that sounds maybe potentially a little daunting, but it doesn't just mean that you are in your room studying those 30 hours by yourself. Really, the most effective students are going to be using some of that time for attending office hours, going to tutoring, maybe studying in group with peers, and so on. So in addition to that solo study time. And they're going to break it out throughout the week like you see here. So this sample was actually created by, excuse me, one of CASA's peer advisors. And you can see that they've also included time for exercise, eating, sleeping, hanging out with friends, really taking advantage of all the great clubs, events, and other opportunities that make being a Mind student exciting. And of course, all of this will vary depending on individual students and your classes and your interest and so on. So it's not set in stone, but we really do want you to just start thinking about how you are going to build a schedule that supports both your academic success and the life and relationships and opportunities that you want outside of class as well.
All right, so to go over transfer credit a bit. So if any of you are still expecting credit posted for AP, IB scores, or transcripts that you're still sending over, those are processed and applied to records within 5 to 10 business days. So you want to give it the appropriate time frame before you reach out with any questions about where the credit's at. Official transcripts are required for any transfer credit that you do want posted. Those have to be sent directly to the school. Those cannot be from the student, or those are considered unofficial. So make sure to check your DegreeWorks audit and Trailhead to review where all your transfer credit landed, and I'll go over that in a bit more detail on the following slides. The transfer course approval form, that can be applicable to you if you see a course that is not showing where you expected it to. That form has a bit more of a departmental review to see if the transfer course you're hoping to be applied for a specific requirement is appropriate and applicable. So that form is available on our website if you do need to use that. If you're planning to waive or decline any of your transfer credit, we do want you to know that is discouraged, and we recommend you consult with CASA before doing that. But if you decide to do so still, that form is also available on our website. Any other specific transfer questions, you can reach out to our transfer specialist at transfer@minds.edu. I'll also mention here for any students interested in the challenge exam. So that's basically the ability to test out of a course. Departments will be reaching out specifically to students who are eligible for that opportunity. And you can also find more information about which classes offer an exam, the eligibility criteria, when and where the exams take place. Most of those are going to be in mid to late August, and the appropriate department contact on our registrar website. So we can move to the next slide. Here is a screenshot of how you can access those student information systems with my.minds.edu on the left. So when you pull that site up, you'll see all the different icons for the softwares applicable to you as a Mind student, Trailhead being one of those options. And when you pull up Trailhead, that's the screenshot on the right, you'll get several different cards. And it's a good place to also pull up registrar forms. Not all our forms are on this card. You'll see other forms on the website, but the forms that are available on this card will usually populate with your information since you're already logged into Trailhead. And so Trailhead's also where you can find the registration systems under the student services card, and where you can update any of your personal information. So we can move to the next slide, and I can go over degree works. For those of you who haven't reviewed your degree works yet, I highly recommend you do so. So when you open this page, you'll see an overview of your academic information at the top. Your major should reflect the most up-to-date information from your survey results with the total credits that you transferred in. You'll also find an overview for your specific degree type with the total credits required, how many have been applied from transferred coursework, completed coursework, or in progress coursework, your GPA info, and your catalog year. So we can move to the next slide, and I'll go over the next block. That's your core requirements followed by your major requirements. The red circles are next to unmet requirements, and those will turn green when fulfilled. And so when you click on the course or courses that correspond to each degree requirement, you'll see if there are any prereqs or co-reqs that you'll need for that class as well. So on the next slide, lastly, in the audit, are your electives. So any transfer credit received that did not apply to a specific requirement will fall under free electives. And when those requirements are met, you'll see those courses after this block in another section titled Courses Not Applied. So that's how you'll know which credits did not transfer to fulfill a specific requirement. So on the last slide here, just a few other registrar services. For in-state students, you want to make sure you've applied for the College Opportunity Fund first on their website, if you haven't already, and then you authorize that use of COF here at Minds. That whole process is outlined on our website, and Trailhead also has a COF card to help you authorize here at Minds. Any questions about residency and COF can be directed to residency@minds.edu. And for veterans or students using VA benefits, please make sure you are in contact with veterans at minds.edu so that you know the steps to take to use benefits here at Minds. You'll need to submit a benefit request form for each term for which you intend to use benefits. So you want to ensure you are aware of all the steps you need to take ahead of time for those benefits to apply at Minds.
Okay, so I know we've been moving pretty quickly. So before we get into academic support, I just wanted to recap a couple things. So first, your schedule will be built for you by the registrar's office. Then it will be released to you, so you'll receive an official email from the registrar's office letting you know when that is ready. So that's going to come early to mid-April, or sorry, August. And then at that point, you will have access to those registration systems that Ariel mentioned to start making changes. but CASA will be providing information for you that we really encourage you to review before you make any changes so that you can make educated decisions on whether or not anything does need to be changed and how to do so. So with that DegreeWorks page, you might start to see, if you're in there, some classes populating that the registrar has enrolled you in. As Ariel mentioned, those courses are subject to change until your schedule is officially released to you. So if you see anything and you're there and you're like, I don't know if this is the right class that I should be enrolled in, I would just sit tight until you receive that notification that your schedule is finalized, and then that's when you might want to go back in there, and we'll also give you some other information on how to review that schedule in August. Um, we do really encourage you, as Ariel mentioned, to check in with DegreeWorks regularly. We would encourage you to do that throughout the semester to make sure courses are applying as you expect. One other tool, if you're exploring Trailhead, we know students are already because we were just having a training last week and we said, oh, looks like students have been in some of these different tools in Trailhead. So you might see another degree planning tool called Smart Plan. We didn't really focus on that today because it's not something you're going to use right now in August, but it is something that you'll be using later in the semester potentially. So we'll be providing more training on that tool at a later date. So if you want to poke around it, that's fine, but we'd really encourage you for now to focus on the degree information that you can find in both DegreeWorks and also another tool that we didn't really mention too much today, but that we'll talk about a lot in August, the academic catalog. So you can access the catalog at catalog.mindset.edu. And the catalog is really the official repository for all the curriculum requirements of majors, minors, the core curriculum, um, and really other academic policies that are pretty important. So we do encourage students to start exploring that if they have not done so yet. And again, we'll provide some more training on that in August. So finally, for academic support, I won't go into a ton of detail about our academic support resources today, but we just did want to remind you that we have some really great options for students. Some of those are hosted by CASA, like tutoring, but lots of great options across campus. So for example, the Counseling Center offers a workshop on test anxiety. They recently started a wellness coaching program. So you'll be hearing a lot about those resources in that CSM 101 class, as well as in the coming weeks. One quick plug with regards to major exploration, the Career Center actually hosted a welcome webinar about that topic with some really great resources. So if you are a student who's thinking that they really want to test the waters and really check out what Minds has to offer and not be too committed to a major right away, if you have not attended that session live or watched the recording, I would encourage you to check out that recording on the Nest Welcome Webinar website. So with that, I think we have concluded our official formal material for today and would like to open it up to some of the questions that you might have.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing all that information. I know we covered a lot of things here. And so we are going to take a little bit of time to do kind of an open Q&A as your questions come in. So I am going to kind of run through the questions that have been submitted so far. And like I said, we've got some people helping answer some in chat as well, and then are kind of saving some for as we go. So I will kind of walk us through what's been asked so far. So the first one was kind of around registration. So it wasn't specific as to like what they were necessarily asked, but they've been asked to register. So can you complete like quote unquote registration without enrolling in classes? Or what does that process look like to register?
So let me try to can you complete registration without enrolling in classes? I'm not entirely sure what this person means by or the student means by the question, but I gonna take a guess here. Could this be applying to maybe if you let me think here about how to answer this because I think I might be a bit confused on the context.
Yeah, I'm thinking it
Um,
maybe is referring to like the registration survey, maybe that they have to fill out would be
so
my
from
guess.
the survey, that is not. and maybe it could be when I was referencing that survey about how your schedules are built. Specifically, the information we're pulling from that survey is your question about honors math registration. If you're interested in taking honors math and you qualify, not every student who selected that they are interested in honors math is likely going to get a spot just because of availability. We're prioritizing certain students based off of how the math department has directed. But that's one piece of information we're pulling. We're also pulling in preference for AM or PM just because we do have evening options and we want to prioritize students who selected that they are interested in PM classes in those PM sections because not a lot of students typically want to see a class into the evening. So those are the main things that we're pulling from the survey. If there's other, classes that are outlined or, questions that you answer that outline specific classes, that's not the information we're taking into account from those surveys are really those two questions. And then, if you wanted to change your major, that information has been updated too, so that you're enrolled in the classes specific to the major that you selected on that survey. I hope that helps, but yeah, definitely post another question and kind of explain a little bit more of what you'd like me to answer if not.
Awesome, thank you. Kind of following up on that, talking about that registration survey, should students have expected to have received a class preferences form, and if so, where could they find that?
A class preferences form. No, the survey, from what I'm aware of, that we're using to build schedules is all that we are including in terms of information that we're pulling from what students have the feedback that they've given us. So uh, any class preference that you are interested in or that you may have select, that's we're not looking at any other information outside of that survey. I'm not too sure where that form might have came up.
So I can maybe comment a little bit on that. So you won't necessarily get that a class preference form, but the registrar is going to make the best schedule for you based on the information you provide in the registration survey. So they're really going to focus on making sure that you are in classes that make progress on your potential major, that fulfill core requirements for most students, and that help create a balanced load in a full semester schedule for each student. So that's why we register students into classes because we can really optimize that. But you might say, you know what, I really would prefer to take CSCI 128 Intro to Computer Science over HAS 100 my first semester. Once you have that first semester schedule, when it's released to you, you will have the ability to make some of those changes based on preference. The limitations are going to be that a lot of our first year classes do run pretty full. So you might find that some classes you're interested in are full this semester, so you might have to grab them next semester, or you just might find timings maybe don't quite work. So we do encourage you to maybe think about keeping the schedule that you're given and really just seeing how it works for you versus doing a lot of customization in that first semester because the courses that were selected for you are really focused on courses you will need to make progress in your degree. But there will be some opportunity for you to do that customization once your schedule is released to you. So that's some of the information CASA is going to be providing to students in August is how to consider those sorts of changes.
Awesome. All right. I'm gonna kind of combine two questions here. I know we covered this just briefly, but if y'all could just cover it one more time for me. How many classes would you say are typical per semester? And then how does that translate to how many credit hours a first year student should expect?
Ariel.
I can, yeah, I can chime in. So, what we are targeting as we build your first semester schedule is 15 credits. We can guarantee at least 12 to keep you full time, with the goal being 15. Um, and I think 15 is generally, and I'm sure Jenny, you may want to add like what is recommended each term. But obviously that there may be some variance to that based off of, each student's individual situation and whatnot. But for that first semester here, most of you can expect around 15 credits.
Exactly. So most students are going to be in 4 to 5 classes, but that could include labs. And so there's a lot of different options. So that's why we typically talk in credits instead of courses, because you may be in only 4 classes, but each of those classes is 4 credits. And that would get you to 16 credits. So there's a lot of different options and combinations that might happen where you might be in 3 5 credit classes, or sorry, 5 3 credit classes, and that would get you to 15 credits plus your CSM 101. So most students, as Ariel mentioned, are going to be comfortable in that sort of 12 to 16 or 17 credit mark, depending on maybe some labs and 1 credit additional classes that they would enroll in. Students can take up to 19 credits without additional permissions. In your first semester, it's a hard limit on 19 credits. Future semesters, you can potentially go over with permissions, but we really don't recommend students take more than that 15 to 17 credits in their first semester. So just so they get a sense of what classes are like at Mines and can settle in and really feel comfortable with workload before they decide to go with higher credit loads. As Ariel mentioned, that is variable based on individual students. So some students are coming in with a full associate's degree that they got from concurrent enrollment, and they may be in a little bit lower credit load just because of prerequisite structure. They won't be able to be too advanced in major classes, but maybe they've gotten a lot of those core classes out of the way. So they might see a slightly lower credit load. Other students who are coming in with less transfer credit might see a slightly higher credit load. It can also depend on your major as well. So typically, 15 to 18 credits is common for a suggested semester by semester plan, but you can see that for individual majors if you go to that catalog.minds.edu and you look at the academics, academic programs, and then find your major or multiple majors of interest. You can see a sample semester by semester plan to give you a little bit of an idea of what's commonly recommended for students. Again, with some individual differences based on just what students prefer and what they're coming in with so far as transfer credits.
Awesome. All right. So thinking about how advisors and the registrar take into account like planning the first semester schedule, do they take into account planning for this year and also subsequent years? So specifically asking around the context of study abroad and other potential opportunities.
Yeah, for study abroad, I will say we work closely with the Global Education Office to pinpoint who the students are who will be studying abroad for spring, so that we can make sure that we get you into classes now that you will not be able to take when you study abroad, and not putting you in the classes that will be available to you while you're abroad. So we do take that into account, and we've got that situation covered with our office. So the classes that you see that you're registered for um, will be in accordance with your first year study abroad in spring.
Awesome. Okay. When does verification through the National Student Clearinghouse become available?
You should be able to request enrollment verification after you're registered. So I would say when schedules are finalized, August 10th, you should be able to request any enrollment verifications that you might need for anything personal.
So- Okay. How soon can minors be declared?
I can take that one. So typically, we would recommend that you would declare that in your second year. So there are some exceptions to that. I know some students maybe who are being paid on certain like scholarships or veterans benefits and need to have an official sort of documentation of something being declared. You can declare earlier. But you really don't need to declare until the first day of the semester you're going to graduate. So we typically recommend students wait a little bit until they have a better idea of the classes that they want to take for that minor and know a little bit more about the minor. before they declare officially, just so that they don't have to go back and change all that information later on. The declaration form for the minor is on the registrar's website. And in that advising Canvas site that I mentioned, we provide some additional information about minors and how you can get to a list of the minors. Our catalog was just changed recently to really clearly provide just a straight up list of all of the minors, very straightforward to see, and as well as their curriculum. So that's another great place to go if you have started to explore minors to learn more about what is required.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna kind of dip into the AP transfer credit of it all. So we've got a couple different questions here. And so I'll start us off with where would a student see their AP credits, or how would they know whether you've received the AP or IB credits?
That will be reflected on DegreeWorks. So for any course that you received, that like an AP or an IP score fulfilling a requirement, it'll say under the course that it was fulfilled or met by that test. It'll typically say like AP, and I know each of the different tests have a number that designates which test it's for, and then the score that you receive. So it's pretty specific when you see that score posted. And then the scores that are not meeting a specific requirement, if you didn't get a score high enough to fulfill a requirement, you will see that either populating in free electives or courses not applied towards the bottom of your DegreeWorks page. And again, it'll outline the AP test and the score you got. And it'll just populate there so that you know it's not meeting a specific requirement.
So DegreeWorks is usually best because you can really kind of see how things are applying to your mind's degree requirements. But in CASA, we typically also recommend students, in addition to DegreeWorks, check out their unofficial transcript because that will give them just a list of everything that's transferred over. So your unofficial transcript is something you can get to in Trailhead on that student services card that Ariel mentioned. If you go to the student services card, you'll see a student self-service link, and then you'll see a link to view transcript, and you can see a list of everything that transferred in there, but you really need to go to DegreeWorks to then see how it's being applied to Mine's requirements.
Awesome. Okay, if a student scored a 4 or a 5 on an AP exam and can get credit for that class at Mines, how do students typically decide whether to accept the credit or take that class their first year?
Yeah, it's a very individual decision, and I know it can be a tough one to make. In general, we do encourage you to accept that credit and move on because the Mines faculty have looked closely at those scores and decided that they think students with those scores are truly ready to move on. We have had some students deny the credit and then really regret it because then they're just not as engaged in the class. They kind of know they think they know what's going on and they don't pay as much attention, and then they end up sort of paradoxically not doing as well as they could have. But you know yourself best. So we do have some students who are like, you know what, that was a class that I took online. I wasn't really paying attention. I just don't feel comfortable with it. We encourage students who really are feeling on the fence or maybe leaning towards declining the credit but aren't sure to contact the department that offers the class and talk to somebody in that, like a faculty member in that department a little bit more because they can do things like give you the syllabus so you can read through and say, hey, oh yeah, this all is kind of seeming familiar, or like the core um, sort of concepts of the class. They can give you more information on that to help you feel comfortable making that decision. So for example, math is a big one if you're thinking about denying any of your calculus credit. We have some really great folks in the math department. If you go to their contact page, you'll see the contact for some other faculty, but if you're finding trouble or you're having trouble locating the person you need to talk to, if you do email casa@mines.edu, we can point you in the right direction if you're just not sure on who to connect with in an academic department on a question you might have about that.
So, okay, I just want to ask a couple questions about kind of some specific cases. So if they've taken a lot of college level coursework and are bringing in, like transferring in a lot of credit, technically they're an incoming first year student, but their classification in degree work shows as sophomore. Does that cause, or could that cause any complications or changes to how they would need to navigate scheduling?
No, it's actually just going to be a great thing for you when you come to register for the next semester. You'll just have a little bit earlier registration time, but it shouldn't cause any issues. I don't know if Ariel, if you have anything else to add with that, but we would consider you a first year, but just a sophomore by credits.
Yeah, no, I agree with all you said there, Jenny. The biggest difference is just allowing you to have a sooner registration time since that's typically based on the credits completed. So yeah, that's all it should impact.
Okay, awesome. And then the other one-off was kind of we have a couple people asking about that their student is going to be an athlete at Mines. So does the registrar take that into account when thinking about times of classes for their schedules? Will they still have about 15 credit hours? Kind of what does that look like for athletes coming in?
Yeah, definitely. Athletes have specific scheduling constraints based off of practices and when you might be traveling for games, which is all communicated to us by the athletics coordinator. So we're aware of those constraints. We plan around them. You'll also see your practice session built into your schedule. That you'll be able to count as one of your success and wellness electives. So yes, we definitely take that into account, and you can still plan for around 12 to 15 credits, typically maybe 13, 14. We know that athletes, you have that NCAA requirement where you have to be full time and at least 12 credits. So you'll want to be mindful of that with any schedule changes you may intend to make. But yeah, you can still expect to see the same total credits, the 12 to 15 that every other student would.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. So kind of going back, thinking about schedules, making changes to schedules. I'll kind of group a couple together here in a couple quick minutes. So the first one is, if you could just clarify again, will they be able to meet with their academic advising counselor once they get their schedules in August, or do they have to wait for those drop-in hours during Hell of a Welcome?
They'll need to wait for drop-in hours during Hell of a Welcome, but we'll have a lot of tutorials online if they want to review those in advance. So there'll be some articles for them to read through to help review their schedule, and there will be some information on how to get into the registration system. And then for connecting one-on-one with a staff member or a small group with a staff member, that will occur throughout Hell of a Welcome week and into the first week of classes as well, because we know students might get into some classes and decide that they need to make some changes or potentially pass a challenge exam and need to make a change. So, but there are other circumstances that will make sure that we have lots of opportunities for students to see somebody with individualized questions that they might have starting that Hell of a Welcome week. And we know we'll have everybody on campus then. So there are specific times set aside in your schedule for that. So it's not like you're going to have to be rushed from, you have to exclude yourself from something else. There is specific time that's set aside in your schedule.
And then on kind of the same idea there. So if a student is assigned, let's say they prefer a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a class, but they get assigned Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but they prefer a Tuesday, Thursday. When can they kind of change sections?
So as soon as your schedule is officially released to you, you'll be able to do that. So there is a little 2-minute video tutorial again in that Canvas site that shows you how to switch times on sections. So it's really just going to depend on if there are seats available and if the class is even taught on Tuesday, Thursday, and things like that. But if there are seats available, you are welcome to make that switch yourself as soon as that schedule is released to you.
And then just double checking on this because it's a separate question. But when those schedules are released, can they add courses onto them, or can they
Mhm.
only like delete and switch?
No, absolutely. So if you are registered into 12 credits and you see a 3 credit class that makes sense, that's maybe in that core curriculum and that has seats, you would be able to go ahead and add that yourself. You won't be able to add beyond 19 credits, and we would really encourage you to maybe come to our drop-ins if you're trying to add 18 or more credits. We think probably that 15, 16 mark is a little more comfortable for students. So typically we like to chat with you a little bit if you're trying to go well above that. but you will have that ability to do that yourself, and you will have ownership of your schedule to add, drop. We just encourage you to do that with caution, as classes do tend to be a little full, as we mentioned. So we just want students to make sure, as they are making schedule changes, that they are doing that very mindfully, that they are not losing any courses that they can't get back into.
Awesome. Just being cognizant of time, I did go ahead and close the ability to submit new questions just because I want to make sure that we get to everybody, the questions that have been answered. So we'll keep working our way through in the time we have left, but just wanted to give you all a heads up that we did close that just to make sure we get to everybody. Okay, so somebody said their first year student is currently showing as not being in the system, specifically for the verification system. Would that be updated once the course schedule is provided, or what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, they will be able to see the enrollment verification after August 10th when schedules are finalized.
Perfect. I'm also seeing somebody said the degree exploration workbook was closed when their student tried to open it. Is that still available for students?
Do you mean the degree works evaluation? Assuming that is the case, we did have some issues with Banner today, so I don't know if it was related to that. Um, if they are having technical issues and getting error messages with that degree works application, Ariel, how would you recommend that they proceed?
If you are getting an error, I think one of the first things we recommend, maybe clear your cache and try to log out and log back in. Um, if you are still having issues, you can definitely reach out to us so maybe we could do like some one-on-one troubleshooting. Maybe you could take some screenshots of the error you're seeing. But we also have an IT help desk. You can submit a ticket for anything that might be beyond our ability to assist with. But I would first recommend clearing your cache and trying to log out and log back in. That's typically if you might see a "you are not authorized to view this page" error, but yeah, anything beyond that might be better for some one-on-one support to kind of see what it is you're looking at.
Okay, can you all talk a little bit about honors courses? And specifically, the question was, do those honors courses give a GPA boost, or are they just typically accelerated courses?
So they are treated with your GPA as any other course, so they don't give a GPA boost. There's different types of honors classes at Mines, so it can be a somewhat complicated question depending on the nature of the honors class. We have an official honors minor, McBride, which is a program that you apply to in your sophomore year, and those populate a lot of our honors like course code coursework, and that's a really opportunity for students to dive deeper into particular subjects and for some of our faculty to really explore some cool topics that they might not teach on a day-to-day basis outside of honors. So there's some different opportunities with that. With our math honors, yes, not necessarily accelerated, but maybe an opportunity for them to dig deeper into some different topics within math. So really the best way is based on the types of honors classes you might be interested in taking. We have some really robust websites that describe those programs in more detail with their contact information on those web pages. So if you're interested first year honors, that would be Thorson or Grandy. I would go to the first year's honors page and go to their contact information to reach out for more. If you're interested in that McBride honors, I would encourage you to go to their website. And if you're interested in going into any academic subject honors, which is a little more rare, we have occasional math honors and maybe one or two others, but not as many of those, just reach out directly to the academic departments for more information. But it would not impact your GPA in a different way than your other classes would.
All right, I'm going to move kind of into a little bit of rapid fire because I know we only have a couple of minutes left. Somebody was saying their smart plan automatically structured a sample schedule
Mhm.
for their degree in 3.5 years. Does the registrar also try to accommodate those students coming in with that many credits to be able to graduate sooner?
Um, Smart Plan may recommend classes that I mean, because its main focus, and again, we'll be diving a bit more into Smart Plan in detail in the future here, but one of the main focuses of that tool is to streamline your time to graduate. So it tries to get you, it tries to build you a schedule so that you have the shortest time till graduation. But that is not always the most idea schedule for you, just based off of how courses may be laid out and what departments might recommend or suggest you don't take together in a certain semester. So I wouldn't necessarily look at what Smart Plan lays out as being the guideline that you should abide by. It's a good tool for planning and just helping you kind of see how you can structure things to graduate by a certain time. But you also want to be aware of like what certain things may need to be prioritized. And certain semesters, like it if you need to take fewer credits or if it's not recommended that you take certain a couple of classes together at the same time, just little nuanced things like that. And Smart Plan also does refresh. Or you should refresh it each time you open it. Again, more details on that because there are a lot of things that you'll want to be mindful of when you're reviewing Smart Plan. But there are things that might be updated with the department and just new things coming in with the catalog. So just to summarize it, you don't want to necessarily look at that 3 year or 3 semester plan. It might be recommending as like a rule of law to go by. When we're building schedules, we're just getting you in the full-time credits. And that is our main focus for your first semester here and making sure we're prioritizing the classes most important for your major to keep you on track for a timely degree completion.
All
That
right.
said, we do have a lot of students graduate in a 3.5 year or 3 year if they come in with a lot of credit. So that is something you can talk with an advisor about later on in the semester and as we get into spring scheduling.
Awesome. Okay. I don't know if you all know the answer, but maybe you do. When will financial aid determination be finalized for merit and FAFSA aid? And then when would be the date for fall tuition? I know that was covered in the webinar we did last week, and that recording is available, but do you all happen to know that off the top of your head?
I do not.
Yeah, I do not.
Okay, all good. I would definitely recommend checking out the recording of our Paying for College webinar last week on our website as well. And then the last one I have, actually, I'll do two quick ones. Are there any additional 1 to 2 credit classes that you would recommend for new students?
Potentially, if you are interested, if your student is a musician, there's some 1 credit music classes that students who really want to continue with their musical training in orchestra and band and things like that, they could add. We do have a wellness elective requirement, and those are typically 1 credit classes. So that's something you could look at exploring, and we'll have some information about those options in your Canvas site that we mentioned in August. So there's a couple little things like that that you might consider adding in fall.
Awesome. All right, and then the last question, I know we just briefly covered this, but just I feel like this is a good one to kind of wrap it up. So on Trailhead, where are students able to find their schedules, and when will students' Canvas courses be loaded onto the portal?
I'll let Ariel take that one.
Yeah, so you can find your schedules when those are finalized. Come August 10th, you'll go into Trailhead, you'll navigate to the student services card, and under student registration, you'll be able to view your schedule there. We'll have screenshots in the email we send that can help guide you to navigate to the right place. There was also a second part to that question.
Yeah, about when Canvas courses will be published.
I believe those are generally like a week before. I am not entirely sure on that, but Jenny, do you happen to know that? I believe it is though.
It is closer to the start of the semester. You might start to see some stuff populate now. If you do, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it again until you get that official schedule from the registrar. And then by hell of a welcome week, you should be able to start getting into your classes, Canvas sites.
Perfect. All right. Well, Jenny and Ariel, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this great information. Really quickly, just a couple reminders for everybody. Be sure to join us for the rest of our welcome webinars throughout the summer. Our next one is for families and supporters only, and that is going to be next Wednesday, July 22nd at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. And that is going to focus on some of the common issues and challenges students face and how families and supporters can best support from afar. So definitely recommend checking that out. Students, your next webinar will be on Monday, July 27th at 4 o'clock, and that is going to be a student-only panel with some of our current student leaders. So a great opportunity to get your questions answered there as well. Also, students, please make sure that you are completing the Order Your Next Steps checklist in your admissions portal and checking your Minds email throughout the summer, as we will have lots of important information coming, not only from our office, but lots of our other campus partners as well. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thank you.